welcome to the Doctor Kirstin Show. I'm your host, Dr. Kirstin Lauritsen. Today, we're gonna have quick, a quick show. Not my normal, I know, but we are gonna talk about something that is really, really close to me, which is burnout, overwhelm, exhaustion, fatigue. We're gonna touch briefly on postpartum depletion, which is more of like a syndrome versus it being like an actual disease process of like postpartum depression or anxiety or anything or autoimmune disease, things like that. But the reason why am talking about it this week, and this was supposed to go up Friday, but it's going out today, and then we'll have our normal episode on Friday, is that, I've just been reminded of how motherhood requires quite a lot of flexibility. And as much as, people will tell you that things need to be a certain way or look a certain way in order for you to be successful, in order for you to be healthy, in order for you to be happy, in order for you to, be thriving in your life, in my experience, it's not really, I mean, you can make it however you want it to be. It gets to be however works well for you and for your family and for your needs and how it needs to look. And I think this is really important because also I think when we start looking at, what healthy looks like and thriving inside of motherhood looks like, when I say the word health, I think a lot of people tend to think like physical health, like, oh, you don't have disease. Oh, you don't have, all these chronic symptoms. You don't have, big allergy symptoms, or you don't have, autoimmune diseases or high blood pressure or diabetes or heart disease or cancer or like anything like that, right? Um, but when I say healthy, also that includes mental health, that includes emotional health and well-being. It also includes your spiritual or soul or energetic well-being, however you want to call that. It actually encompasses the entire person. And when I see so many people like everywhere on the internet talking about different things, what I feel like get like different aspects of health, right? Like some people are talking about your fitness, some people are talking about nutrition, some people are talking about making sure that you're supporting certain enzymes and nutrients in order to support those processes, right? Like there's so many different ways of looking at health. And then also too, you have your therapists and counselors and people like that who are then talking about your mental well-being or your emotional well-being. And what I feel like tends to happen is that there's a big, big gap. I did talk about this last week and on the last couple episodes, but I feel like there's a big gap where it all comes together. And instead of looking at everything in isolation, looking at it more in the terms of where it's all important and all of it is connected and all of it is playing off of each other. I think this is really, really important because when we're talking about motherhood, when we're talking about burnout, when we're talking about overwhelm, I think a lot of women and moms feel like they're failing when it seems like, why don't you have it together? Why aren't you able to do all the things like everyone else? Why aren't you, being able to do these things, right? Like why is it so like everybody says it's so hard, but then also like why does motherhood have to be that hard? Why does it seem like it's this gauntlet of survival? And to answer those questions, I think what's really important is that we consider the fact that when, I've been reading some of the books by Gabor Mate that he wrote, and one of the things that was really important that stood out to me that he said was that when physicians or doctors get more specialized, and get higher education, they get more and more specialized around one specific system in the body, like one organ, like thyroid or the gut, right? Gastrointestinal or cardiovascular, right? Like you go see these different specialists. again, where I feel like people get lost in the mix of things, especially women who don't have specific symptoms that are lining up with specific diseases, they get lost in the mix. And you end up hearing and getting back a lot of like, well, we don't know what's wrong with you, or oh, all your labs are normal, so there's not a problem here. But that doesn't actually mean there isn't a problem. It just means that you aren't fitting into the specific criteria that then give you the diagnosis that there's a problem. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this particular topic is because the Doors for Worthy, the workshop that I created to help women learn how to actually meet their own needs and that it matters and that you can meet those needs in tandem with also meeting the needs of the others in your family is really important when we're talking about getting to the root of ending burnout and overwhelm. Those that is open. The doors are open. They're always open, but to take advantage of the discount that is available right now, to get the special pricing, like that is open. So just putting that in the show notes for you if you want to join at the end of this, please go ahead and click that link and jump in because by the end of, well, this was going to be the end of today, but because I'm recording this today, because it was supposed to be out Friday, but is out today because motherhood requires you to be flexible, it will be available for the next few days. But definitely make sure if this is something that you want to do, don't hesitate. Make sure to jump in because that will go away and it will go back up to 297. Now, of course, it's always available. So if you want to just jump in, then that's fine as well. But I know that a lot of people, including myself, love to save a little bit as well. So when I think one of the things that's really important when we are talking about burnout and overwhelm and really like what it looks like to thrive inside of motherhood is that I really I see a lot of women, moms, who say like motherhood is hard, and it's almost coming off that it's not just hard, but that it's like a big struggle. Like it's really, really challenging. And I can certainly relate. My daughter this weekend had a fever of 104 most of the nights, and so we were up a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And just, several months ago, 8 to 10, when she was 8 to 10 months, there was a time where she just woke up every few hours. And that was really, really hard for me. I would say that was like the last straw that broke it for me, that like things were okay and going well. But once that happened, once my sleep was gone, that's when things really unraveled and fell apart. And I just didn't feel supported by like my social like systems, like friends. I didn't, and that was in part my own doing because I realized at that time I actually didn't know how to tell people that I was not okay. Um, and even asking for help, like I have support systems, I have people around, I have family members that are close, and there's also additional pressures sometimes, right, that like make it harder to ask for that support and to ask for that help. So that was a time where things really, really tanked for me inside of motherhood. And that is when I realized that there was something else going on here than just like the typical diagnoses that you usually see, which are like postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And that's also when I realized how much gets put on mothers, that the amount of load and pressure that ends up on moms is a lot. And it's not lost on me that also then what I'm saying here is that like you need to know how to meet your own needs, like putting that back on you. But I would say, so two things. I don't want to lose my train of thought here, but one, I know that when hard things happen, we have a tendency to want other people to like just do the thing, right? Like just send me food. Don't ask me what I want, just send me food. And all of that gets to be okay. And I also think that we, it's almost bypassing that narrative that I think gets placed around a lot, bypasses the personal responsibility that we have to be able to speak up and use our voice and take ownership over what we need. Plain and simple. Like, we've got to be the advocate for ourselves. You have to. Nobody else is going to do that. Is it nice when people come and they just stop by and they say, "Hey, like, I'm here, like, let me support you," and then they take care of your house and they clean and they get send food and all of those things? Of course. Of course. That is what we can do for other people. And there is also a really important point here that we need to be able to ask for our own needs and, in some cases, meet those needs ourselves. It's just so important. And so when I went through this time, I was like, okay. I am learning a lot here. The coolest thing though too is that I created the Worthy Workshop months before that. And it almost brings me to tears every single time that I think about it because what I realized was that like I literally created what I was going to need a few months later. And that is just one of the coolest things about the work that I get to do. And that I also get to share it with others when I realize, like, holy smokes, like this is something that was really hard for me, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of resources around this. So, like, let's put it out there. Let's get this out there as a resource to others because I know how much it helped me and how much I needed it. So, I guarantee you there's going to be others who need it as well. So that's like one chunk. But the other chunk that I wanted to talk about there too is that sometimes, so in this the context of motherhood being hard and it being a struggle, I think what can sometimes happen is that when people hear like, oh, work on your mindset, like learn how to process your emotions, learn how to transform your life and create what you want, is that it's going to create this idea that like life isn't going to be hard anymore. And that's not the case, right? Like we're still living on planet Earth. Like things are going to happen. Stuff's going to be hard. Things are going to be frustrating and then we're going to have difficult times. We're going to have low points. We're going to have times that we're very challenged. But it's different than it being like stuck in this like struggle. That is the thing that changes. Because in it's a very important distinction that we make between it being hard and it being a struggle. Because the struggle is where your mental space is creating around because of certain beliefs that you have, it is creating more of the problem and making it harder for you to move through the thing that you need to move through. I look at it kind of as like we're resisting the change and the transformation that we're being called to make, but don't want to, or we want to, but we still have all these beliefs around it that it's making it really hard for us to actually like do the thing. I see this like as, and I think this is where it's really important that we see that difference because inside of motherhood, like there's all inside of life, it's going to be hard. We're going to be faced with challenges. But if you're struggling, there's a lot more going on there. And it's probably because whatever is going on is really dysregulating to your nervous system. It's causing you to go into fight or flight or into survival mode. It's causing you to be stuck there and stay there, which requires a whole lot of resources. And when you do that, and when you end up at capacity or over capacity, you start losing your tolerance and you start losing your capacity for stress. So if that happens over time, it leads to depletion, it leads to burnout, it leads to overwhelm. And here we are. And the other piece of this, the other layer of this, is that one of the reasons why I believe that women And I see in my practice all the time that women have a really hard time having their needs met is because of a whole lot of conditioning and a whole lot of programming and beliefs around not being enough, not being capable, or not being worthy. And then comparisons to past generations of how much they did and they were able to do it. So why can't you? You should be able to hold it together and get it together. You should be able to do all of these things. And it bothers me so much when I see this because when you look at like even just other cultures outside of the United States, like they have extensive, some countries have extensive amount of time for women who are in postpartum to have that time off. They even have, some cultures have like months, months of support in the house, like non-optional. People helping to clean, people helping to cook, people helping to do all of these things. And it's like built in, which we would love to have. But here it's a little different. And the way that so many things have kind of been placed on moms is that you have to be the one to create it. And as much as that ends up being one more thing for women to do, I also think that there's a if that's the case, then like we've got to figure out how to work with it, right? And so if it's not built in, then we got to create it. We have to create the village. We have to create the support. We have to ask for what we need and for what we want, which means you also need to believe that you deserve to have that kind of support, that you deserve to be supported in that way, that you deserve to have your needs met. And there's another thing. Our culture, this society tends to place all of the importance on the kid of like, how are they doing? What do they need? What do you need to do for them that then helps them and you have a secure bond to help them sleep well, to help them thrive, to help them grow, to help them have all of the resources that they need. But mom gets kind of lost. And the most fascinating part of all of that is that moms, there's two to tango, right? But like your well-being is just as important as your kids' well-being, and it plays as large of a factor on creating that secure bond, that secure attachment with your kids. It's vital. And why is it important to have a secure bond and a secure attachment with your kids? Because when you have a secure attachment with your kids, they are able to communicate with you. They want to communicate with you. They know that they can come to you with problems. They know that they can come to you for whatever. They also know that when there's conflict, like you say, hey, no, you cannot do this thing, or hey, what you did was wrong, or hey, whatever it is, that the relationship, the container of that relationship is still solid. Now, I want you to think about this for a minute because think about when a child knows, like, I'm still loved, I'm still connected, I still matter, I'm still significant, I'm still enough, I'm still worthy, I'm still okay, even though I just face a hard thing, or even though I just acted in a way that is not appropriate for the current space, or even though I'm having these really big emotions, I'm still supported and I'm still okay. Or you had a fight or whatever. The relationship, the container is okay. On a bigger scale, the entire point of raising kids, right, is to be able to raise them into adults who are mentally, emotionally, and physically well. Ideally, right? We can't account for all of the things, but we're meant to give them the tools to be able to be thriving adults. that are able to contribute to society, right? That they're able to, live a good life. That's the point. That's success, right? Now I want you to think about this in terms of relationships, marriages, partnerships, friendships. When they are able to have modeled that sometimes there can be conflict, sometimes there can be things that go wrong, but the container, the relationship itself is not at jeopardy, that they are still safe. Now, think about the impact of that on a marriage. Being able to say, hey, my needs aren't being met. Hey, I need support. Hey, this is not working for me. How can we make this work? Being in conflict. It's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Hey, that hurt my feelings. That, and then, and then also knowing and feeling that that relationship is not going to fall apart because they have been modeled that conflict can be safe, that it can be a safe thing, and that relationships, particularly with the right people, right, can withstand that and come back together and still be supportive and still be loving and still be a point of connection and still be a place for growth, that you matter. It changes, right? It changes how they are able to be in functional relationships as adults and that they can create them because they've had it modeled to them. I was reading a comment on social media this past week, and it was like a long list. It was a father who had said it's really important that we change how we respond to our kids, that we're not saying like suck it up, like, hey, what you're doing, like, you, um, you need to go take a time out, or, kind of not acknowledging what the actual like feelings or emotions are, and asking them like, hey, what's going on for you right now? It's kind of like the gist of it. And I know that so many people hear that kind of parenting and they think, oh, it's gentle parenting. Oh, you're going to raise entitled kids that, are just, they just do whatever they want and they feel whatever they want, even when it's really inappropriate, and they just become crazy kids that are all over the place and just don't behave well. But what I also thought was really fascinating is that, like, I scrolled through the comment section and I found a comment that a father had wrote who was a Marine and that had that kind of, you know, we don't do emotions around here. We suck it up. Like, we don't cry. We don't do that sort of thing. The hard kind of mentality that goes along with that. And you know what he said, which I thought was so interesting, is he goes, that bred, like that led to his kids not talking to him. That led to his kids not, like really like not having a relationship with them when they turned into, older kids, like teenagers. They didn't come to him with stuff. They didn't, want to talk to him about things. And what he had to learn, what he had to do was shift how he was talking to them. He had to learn how to listen. He had to learn how to acknowledge how they were feeling, which, by the way, meant that he had to learn that for himself. And you know what was the best part about this whole thing is that he said once he started to do that, he now has much better relationships with his kids. The thing is I just talked about that in like the father standpoint, but here's what's fascinating. For a lot of the women that I work with who are high achieving, like ambitious moms, one of the things that is the most common pattern I see is that you learned likely somewhere along the lines that emotions are bad. Emotions hurt. Emotions are uncomfortable. We don't show emotion, or it's dangerous. It's not safe to feel our emotions. So what happens is you end up in doing mode. You go into fix it mode. And that way you can bypass it and ignore how you're feeling, which, by the way, continues to lead to burnout and overwhelm. And this pattern happens when you see our kids have big emotions. And it also happens when you have emotion. Just right prior to recording this, I was like, um, Addie was waking up and I was like, I was going to make this a shorter episode, which look, it's not. She went back to sleep. But I was getting really frustrated and I was trying to avoid saying that I was getting really frustrated because, I just didn't want to admit that like this was happening and that my, intentions for getting this out there was being interrupted. And if I don't get this out there, then, maybe, people aren't going to find my programs or, whatever it is. And I find it all just so fascinating because, and it's also like such a learning lesson here too, right? Because, just as like I'm going through this, I wanted to avoid that emotion. I wanted to just brush it off and just be like, it's okay. Like, I can just figure it out. Like, I'll just do it later or I'll get this done tomorrow. Like, it's fine. And then I wrote out this whole text to my husband about, like, I'm gonna need help and da 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 da. And then I just stopped for a minute and I was like, yeah, let's just acknowledge the fact that I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. Like, I want to be able to get this done. And you know what? It moved through so much easier. And I also sent a message to my husband, which then you know what he did? He volunteered to go in there and just rub her back for a minute so I could get this done and she's back asleep. Literally in real time. In real time. I asked for what I needed. And you know what I would have done before then? I would have been like, nope, it's fine. I'll go get her. We'll wake her up. It's whatever. We'll just deal with this later. And I'll either get it done today or I'll just try and figure out how to get it done tomorrow and, be in that mode. This is a pattern that's really common with moms. It's also really common in women who are high achievers and ambitious women because this is how you learned to deal with emotions. You learned to just be more productive and do more. And by the way, this shows up in your health over and over and over again. Something I shared yesterday was that one of the first things I had to learn when I was really, really digging deep into healing like endometriosis and migraines was to actually acknowledge how I felt in any given moment. One of the hardest things for me to do. How am I feeling? What do I want? And what do I need? Hardest three questions that I had to answer for myself. And there were so many days where I was like, I don't even know. I don't even know. But that's how you start breaking the patterns. Those three questions I give those to a lot of my clients as tasking, like as homework. It's like, this is where we begin. Because when you start acknowledging how you feel, the body starts moving. It starts moving stuff out. It starts moving things through. It's imperative. And it allows for those emotions to move through rather than get stuck in the body. So when you know how you're feeling, when you acknowledge it, and then when you also ask for what you need, whether or not you get the support is one thing. That's a whole other thing that we got to look at, especially too if you are afraid of being a burden, if you feel rejected when people say no, if you feel guilty for asking for that support or and receiving it, right? All of those things are extra things that we have to look at. And that's actually something that we talk about inside of the Worthy Workshop and go much deeper into inside of functional motherhood, which is my big like motherhood experience. And I would also say too, this is where people will go through those programs and we're still having like deeper conversations around it inside of my private coaching and deep dive private coaching because these layers can go so deep. And I find that, especially for high achieving women, there's so much usually that like it's a constant learning process and there's always more to learn. And so, we start with the basics and we build from there and we dig deeper. But these are all, I would say, just like really, really important patterns to be aware of because they absolutely influence the perfectionism, the people pleasing, the lack of boundaries, the like ignoring your emotions that over time lead to just the whole on process of crashing and burning. And maybe something works for your health or for whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish in your life. But then over time, the patterns start to come back again because you never really changed the identity, right? Like the pattern that was causing the problem in the first place that's now here and it's back again. So it doesn't really matter if we're talking about this in the context of health. It doesn't matter if we're talking about this in the context of motherhood. Like things are hard and your mindset and how you process and manage your emotions is important because it can manage and it can reduce the struggle, the resistance that we have, where we dig our feet in. Even though we're saying, like, I want that other thing, I want to feel joy, I want to thrive in my life, I want to feel better, I want the health that I want. Yet the struggle is us like burying our feet and digging them deeper into the ground, resisting the change, refusing basically to like learn the things that we need to learn and to do the hard work that gets us where we want to go. That's where it's at. So whenever I see struggle in my life or in my like clients' life, like they're like struggling through something, I know what we have to start chipping away at. And especially too, if you identify with that like ambitious, like high achieving mom or just woman in general or person, like that's going to be a pattern that needs to be addressed. So, yes, things are hard, but also our mindset and the thoughts that we have can significantly change how more easily we move through the hard. I don't think there's a better way to say that. Like, I think that's exactly how to say that. And ultimately, I think that's just the difference between having a nervous system that's in that like connected, safe state versus being in the nervous system that's in survival mode and fight or flight that, over time just leads to complete burnout of resources. It leads to complete depletion, like your cells are struggling and ultimately leads to chronic health stuff. This is why your nervous system has to be in a safe space in order for you to heal, in order for you to feel joy, in order for you to thrive in your life. Your nervous system has to be in a safe place, which means that the way you think, the things that you believe, the things that you do, all have to line up with that. And I will tell you, if you are someone that struggles with acknowledging how you feel, it's not safe. You are essentially, I want you to think about this for a minute. Like, let's say you had a boss that was like, I don't care how you feel. I don't care that you're sick. I don't care that you don't feel well. You still have to like get the work done. Those are not fun people to work for. In fact, that sort of mentality often leads to a lot of like very high turnover. And That's essentially what you're doing to your body when you say, I don't care how you feel. I don't want to listen. We just need to grit this out, work harder, do more. It's fine. Not great, right? Not great. It's like you're just what's that the saying? It's like you're just ramroding over yourself, right? Like just don't care. That's essentially like telling your body that it is like not safe for it to like have feelings, for it to have the experience that it's having. I read about this the other day and I thought it was so good because this is one of the wording on this is so good. I read that the goal ultimately in like healing and coming back to ourselves and to knowing who we are and authentically being who we are is really getting to a place where internally we have the capacity and the capability to rest inside ourselves, like an inner serenity. And I love it. I loved when I read that. I was like, that's it. That's it. Because I want you to think about this for a minute. When you're burned out, when you're overwhelmed, when you're facing emotions and like there's chaos everywhere, what does it feel like in your body? It feels like chaos, right? Like it just feels like, ah, that's how you're feeling inside your body. Now imagine what it would be like if you could recognize that feeling and also be able to move yourself back into that place of finding that inner rest, finding that inner serenity, that inner peace, and being able to rest there, even when life is lifing, chaos is happening around you, things are hard, financial stress, financial struggles, whatever it is, right? Even despite all of those things, you can come and rest inside yourself. I actually think that is where the true root of not just ending chronic health conditions, but also like burnout, overwhelm, all of the things like that in the human experience, I think is like where it really comes down to. I also think this is where you find the like Zen, the like other things that, different spiritual teachings teach. Like this is kind of along those lines. But when you're able to access that and create that for yourself, that then means that you can hold containers for other people, for other things, that you can hold those spaces for their stuff and not necessarily have it wreck yours. And it also means that when we are putting all of that focus on this rest in our external world that you constantly hear, right? Like, oh, you just need to rest more. Oh, you need to get out of the hustle and grind. Oh, you need to get out. That's just culture. You need to rest more, right? Like, you just need to be able to rest. I'm not saying that you don't need to. You do need to. You do need to. That's all really, really important. You need to slow down. If you have not gone for like a slow walk, like slow, like so slow, like walking with a 1 year old slow, which is like each pace is practically 10 seconds long, like 5 seconds long. I don't know. It's a very, very slow pace. I'm going to start giving that as homework to some of my clients because honestly, I saw my neighbors do that a while like last summer, and I was like, holy smokes, I don't think I can do that. And I went out and I did it, and I was like, wow, this was a really hard exercise for me. to just almost like meander. This really slow, intentional walk because I am like, get to point A to point B literally as fast as possible. I have way too much to fit into my day. We got to go get the garbage can from the long driveway. We got to get back. I got to do all these things. Like slow walking is like, nah. That, in my opinion, though, in my experience, is really where it all comes down to is being able to find that inner peace, the inner calm, the inner serenity. Because then when you're there, no matter what happens in the external, like we put all this focus on the external rest that you need to be doing, but really where the focus needs to come from is from the inner state. Because once the inner place is aligned for that, then resting becomes so much easier. Taking care of yourself becomes so much easier. Asking for what you need becomes so much easier. Which is why, when it comes to burnout and overwhelm and postnatal depletion and all of these things that happen inside of motherhood that are challenging and difficult and hard, we start with the basics, which is learning what it looks like, what it actually means to meet our own needs, and that you are worthy and deserving of having those needs met, that you are capable of that, and that you are enough, and that you are doing enough, and that you are good enough. When your brain believes that, when you've rewired your brain to believe it, that is then when your brain has no other choice than to start collecting evidence that that is true, that that new belief is true. Because remember what's in your filing cabinet, in those files of what was created between 0 and 8 years old. If you had a belief, if you learned at some point in time any sort of limiting belief, but let's choose the one that I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy or my worth is tied to my achievements. Therefore, I must accomplish, I must be productive, I must achieve in order to feel valuable and worthy. Your brain will continue to focus on and give you more evidence that that belief is true until you change it, until you take new neurons and create a new connection and allow them to fire together so they can wire together over and over and over again. That then gets you a different result. It gives you a different thought pattern. It gives you a different feeling. It gives you a different action. And then it gives you a different result. Literally in that order. That is the key. That is the recipe for change. And when you are able to do that, when you are able to change the belief at the subconscious level, literally, when you are able to rewire for what you want, that's when change happens because your brain starts giving you new evidence of the new thing. The things that you learned back then, you learned, which means that new things can be learned. Things can be unlearned and new things can be learned. It's literally as simple as that. And you're making a choice. You're either making a choice to stay where you are right now, or you're making a choice to move forward with something new, to change, to transform, to learn something new so that you can get a different result. In my experience, that right there is when people actually heal, when people actually lose the weight that they want to lose, when people actually change, they stop yelling at their kids. They start feeling more confident. They stop feeling guilty for everything that they do, for all of the things that they don't do with their kids in a way that is appropriate. If you're feeling guilty because actually like you need to spend more time with your kids, then that's a whole other thing. But I digress. You get what you actually create the motherhood that you want, where you feel more calm, where you feel more confident, where you feel more connected, where the self-doubt starts to just go away. And you realize that like you can just be the mom that your kid needs to be and who you are meant to be as who you are. That, that's it. That's all of that is what changes and eliminates the burnout and the overwhelm because you're not failing. You're likely doing way more than you even need to. And when you're able to see that and eliminate the things that you don't need to be doing so that you have more space to, number one, do more of the things that you want to do and have more space to be just you and do the things that you need to do, but also the things that you want to do, you're going to be happier. You're going to have more joy. You're going to be more present. All of the things that moms want. And it starts with what you believe about yourself. So, this is my invitation to join the Worthy Workshop, to start just at the basics, start at the foundation. I give you the tools. It's a 90-minute masterclass with also a meditation at the end that you can come back to over and over again. And it takes you through so many of the misconceptions around what it means to meet our own needs. And then at the end, I give you the actual steps, the actual exercise that I walk my clients through that you can absolutely do and will absolutely have a significant impact on your life in the best of ways. Your brain will show you so much more evidence of you that you are worthy and that you are enough. When you make these changes, your brain has no other choice, no other option than to start showing you evidence of that. It will. It does, because how could it not? There are obviously other layers. There are deeper layers. There's more learning to do. As I mentioned, there's always more learning to do. And when you make these kinds of changes, like your brain changes. Just like it does inside of motherhood. It changes, it rewires, it learns new things. And then that is what changes your identity, which then gives you a different result in your life. It's that simple. So the Worthy Workshop is open now. If you're seeing this at a later date, it's also open. You can come on in at any time. And if you want to take advantage of some of the savings, it's $67 right now. It will go up to $297, but I would love to have you inside of that workshop if this is just in alignment with what you need right now. So, if you also have any questions around this, or if you had any ahas or breakthroughs from this episode, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Please come find me on Instagram at Dr. Kirstin, and I just would love to chat with you and hear more about what shifted just from this episode. So, thank you for hanging with me. I know I said it was going to be short, and here we are. I ended up being able to get the hour, and so I'm really really excited about that. But or a little bit under, but. I'm just really glad that we were able to get this recorded for you today. So, another one will be out on Friday. We're probably going to talk about postnatal depletion. But as always, I just so appreciate you for listening. Please, if this was helpful for you, like please consider writing a review or rating the podcast and liking and subscribing if you're watching on YouTube, as well as sharing with a friend, especially too if you know someone that might be struggling with some of these things. Like this is how it gets out to more people, and this is how, as a community, we help get moms the support that they need. And ultimately, that's then when moms are more supported, we create generations, and we pass on generational health, generational well-being. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Take care.